Hello everyone. The texture project is going to take the form of a digital collage. So we're going to use digital image editing software to assemble a group of photographs into a composition. And the focus, of course, is going to be texture. Digital imaging software just handles texture so amazingly well. You've got to start with content. Content is the thing that is the reason that you're making the work in the first place. It answers the question, why did you make it? You need to start with a big idea. In fact, a big idea or two. And you want to put those ideas down on a brainstorming sheet and start making connections and finding new relationships that you can connect and find photographs of elements or make drawings or add, anything that you can to help tell that story, to bring that group of symbolic elements together to create something meaningful and impactful. Here are a few previous student examples of this digital collage. You'll notice each one has a real focus on texture and meaningful content. You're also going to notice that there's a color scheme involved here. That's one of the things that I want you to really focus on, is not only how are you using texture, but how are you using a color scheme to help accentuate this image. Think about not only what textures will help you bring meaning to the work, but also what colors are appropriate symbolically or emotionally. Like, color can really set the mood, just like value. So finding the right color scheme, whether it's high contrast like a complementary scheme, or an analogous scheme like this one, right? Yellows and greens and yellow greens in between, those are all right next to each other. It's an analogous scheme. Think about which textures you're going to use and what color scheme you're going to employ. Each one of these students started with a big idea. Go to the big ideas handout, pick out a couple of ideas that you think relate to one another, that interest you, that you want to explore. Put them down on your brainstorming sheet, and again, start making connections. Find a way to take it from the universal level, which is what those big ideas are, and bring it down to earth, right? Like, you start at the universal level and then you start to move towards more specific things that you can photograph, textures that you can find and get into your image, people, places, things that represent those big ideas here on this level. That's where you've got to start, is with the idea. And that big idea is going to lead you to subject matter. What's the setting going to be? Does it need to be a landscape or an interior? Does it need to have no space, right? No discernible space? Maybe you're just going to start with a flat texture and layer things over the top of it and make it more ambiguous. Start thinking now about what photographs you're going to gather to help you tell this story. So the process again goes, find your big ideas, brainstorm it, then move to making thumbnail sketches of what the composition might look like. Where are you going to place your focal point? Hopefully at 1/3. How are you going to arrange the other elements in that composition to lead your eye to that focal point? That's all worked out in the thumbnailing sketches. And then once you've found the best composition, you'll take that thumbnail that's got that structure and create a rough sketch from it, a larger sketch with a little more detail, a little larger than your thumbnail sketches. And all of this starts with you looking at good examples like these previous texture projects that are available to you in eCampus, but also looking at professional collage artists, whether they're traditional or digital. Open your eyes. That's part of the preliminary research. The design process is looking at those examples you'll want to gather those for your research folder as well. Be thinking about color scheme. As you're sketching, think about what color scheme will help you set the mood. Like this piece, the scheme is a triadic scheme. They're blues and reds and yellows. Those are the primary colors. They really create a sense of overall color, like you're getting colors from all over the color wheel that really resonate in a certain way. So, depending on the mood that you're trying to set, what you're trying to say, you're going to choose a different color scheme that really fits with what you're creating. Take a look at the instructions, read them carefully. There is a section for resources like that have those examples in them, list of collage artists, etc. You want to early on follow the design process, so look through that section, watch the video, read about big ideas and how to implement them in your work, how to brainstorm, how to sketch, etc. There will also be lecture videos and tutorials on how to use that digital imaging software. Now, if you've got Photoshop and you know how to use it, more power to you. If you don't have access to Photoshop, there is the online version called Pixlr that will do a lot of what you need from Photoshop, and it's very similar, and it's absolutely free. Here are the instructions. Read them carefully, please. Read the overview of the assignment. Again, digital collage, 2 big ideas, brainstorm, thumbnail, sketch, rough sketch, find examples to turn in for your preliminary research, how to execute the design, things to consider, and there's a section at the bottom for deliverables, when it's due, etc. Again, the creative process, that preliminary research that you're going to do, there's a video, there's a section on brainstorming and sketching, there's the big ideas handout. So critical that you start here, find those big ideas, put them down on a piece of paper and see where they lead you. That section for brainstorming and sketching, if you put your big idea down on a sheet and let it branch off to other ideas, you can fill a sheet very quickly. And remember, the goal is you start at that universal level, like identity in this case, and then you branch out into more specific things as you go. And you'll find that you'll start to list things that you can photograph or draw or, create in some way that will fit into the story that you're telling. It will help you create that work of art, that design in a meaningful way. Remember, this is content. The big ideas are about generating content, having something to say, a reason why to make the work. There's a whole section on brainstorming and sketching here, how to brainstorm, what the thumbnail sketches should focus on, and then what the rough sketch should be about. There are resources for how to brainstorm and generate ideas. There's examples of a brainstorming sheet here, right, where you just fill the page, branching off and making connections between these elements, right? And here are some thumbnail sketches. And really what you're doing there is working out composition. Where are you going to place this thing? What's the focal point going to be? How are you going to arrange things? How are you going to create a sense of motion? Maybe even where are you going to place the shadows, where the highlight's going to go? Remember, value pattern is so important. You can work out all of that in this thumbnailing process. And you can make annotations to the side as well to help you gather your thoughts and organize them. And then you draw a rough sketch from the best thumbnail sketch, a little bit larger than your thumbnail sketches, with a little more detail. Examples of traditional and digital collage. Here's Maggie Taylor. She uses a lot of kind of vintage photos and kind of hand colors them. I think in Photoshop in a digital environment. But there's something really mysterious and beautiful about her work. It's not necessarily focused on texture, but there's certainly some texture here, and that muted color that she applies is really beautiful. Here's Robert Marr's work. He layers textures underneath elements and then places his focal point over the top of it. It has a real graphic quality and like strong color. Really amazing work. This is the work of Andrea Costantini. Really amazing digital work. Lots of portraits, focused on the head. The eyes are always obscured, so it's about identity. Really beautifully rendered work. And, again, not necessarily completely about texture, although there's plenty of texture within these. It's hard to create a collage that doesn't have at least some focus on texture. I really love the way that he has these elements emerge from the head of these portraits, and it really speaks to the life of the mind, dreams, etc. Romer Bearden's work, really amazing, a real pioneer in collage. You should definitely check his work out. Joseph Cornell is one of my personal favorites. Just these beautiful shadow boxes, they're like half 3D, half 2D, just amazingly assembled. If you ever get a chance to see his work in person, I highly recommend it. This is Hannah Hawk, a pioneering collage artist, really disquieting stuff, incredibly energetic. Here's Ben Giles, his collage work, all these botanicals and like anatomical elements, really amazing stuff. Fred Tomaselli, again, very intricate. You don't have to get this detailed, but his work is just fantastic. He will collage these elements together, and it just explodes with energy. Robert Rauschenberg is an amazing artist. His collage work, it's more silkscreen, but it takes the form of a collage, and the texture that results from the silk screening is just amazing. You could emulate some of that look with filters in your digital imaging program. Richard Hamilton, another amazing collage artist. The way that he'll use kind of planes of color over the top of these photocopied elements. There's this strange juxtaposition of these smoother textures and more graphically generated textures. Here's Kurt Schwitters, one of the pioneers of collage. Of course, Picasso and Braque were the first, but very quickly after that, the Dada artists like Schwitters took up the form and took it to the next level. Amazing structure in his compositions, beautifully done. Eduardo Recife, another incredible artist that uses a lot of vintage elements in his work, dreamlike and beautiful, just fantastic. You definitely want to get your camera out and start shooting, whether you're shooting textures or objects or people or places. You really want to have a library of images to choose from. Now, there may be some instances where you need an image, but you can't get the photograph yourself. Make sure that you're going to sites that have royalty-free images that you can use. You still have to document where everything comes from. If you're going to use it in your project, I expect you to document who made it and what website did it come from. To that end, like if you're looking more for vintage things, you can go to the digitalcollections.nypl.org website. This is the New York Public Library, and they've started digitizing a lot of their collection. So you can do a keyword search, say, searching for a child, say my big ideas about childhood, and maybe innocence lost, or maybe childhood dreams. I don't know. So Make sure that you are looking for the public domain materials, right? Like, so if you make sure that's ticked, you might actually get an image that is legitimate and free, and you're not going to have to worry about it being, a copyright infringement. Do your search, and now we can be relatively assured that these photos are going to be legitimate, that you can use them. You can download this to your computer, open it up in Pixlr or in Photoshop, and incorporate it into your digital collage. Likewise, pixabay.com has royalty-free images. Make sure that you copy the name of the photographer, the artist, and capture the URL address from where it came from. Save it with that file. In fact, you probably want to just create a Word document where you lay out all of the links and information about any files that you use that aren't your own. Again, I want you to primarily rely on your own photography. Don't rely on other people for your photos unless you absolutely have to. Start with your own. Okay, here's unsplash.com, very similar to Pixabay. You don't have to credit the photographers, the artists here, but I still want you to. I still want you to gather that information up, and if you can, donate to them. Finally, you're going to get those textures and photos of people and places and bring them into Pixlr. Or if you know Photoshop, you can use it. But you're going to essentially bring these elements in, like I'll hide these layers, like you start with a texture and maybe layer another texture over the top of it. Remember, you can change the blending mode or the transparency setting in this software so you can blend one texture into another, which is even more intriguing, more beautiful in some instances. And then you can bring in photos of people, places, objects. Like I'm going to change the blending mode of this back to normal right quick. Oh, and I've got a mask on it as well, so I'm clipping the texture into the shape of that monument. So I can remove this mask so you can see the original, right? It's just a silhouette of a monument. Let me undo that and return the blending mode. So there are individual layers here, textures and objects, and I can add more to it. Here's another one, multiple layers, all starting with textures. And I recommend that you do the same, like make sure that you've got a texture that kind of unifies the whole compositional structure. That's the project in a nutshell. Start with big ideas, sketch, brainstorm, find examples, gather photos and textures, and start assembling the thing digitally. Again, I'm not opposed to you doing as much as you want to by hand. Like you can cut some things out and then photograph them if you'd like, or you can use the digital software to do the cutting out. Ultimately, you want to assemble it here in your software. You can start with paint if you'd like get a big paintbrush and some paint and make some splatters or some rough brush work that's going to serve as a texture, and then layer another texture over the top of that, and then start putting objects in and people and overlaying anything that you want that helps you to create that meaningful image driven by a big idea that helps you make a connection with other people. Right? That's ultimately what you're trying to do as an artist anyway, is make connections, help people to see in a new way, right? So, good luck.